Welcome to this episode of Sunny Silver Linings. Today's interview features Vikram Kanikar, Chief Product Officer, and Ryan Bailey, Senior Product Manager of ITBD's newest client and employee engagement platform, Team GPS. In this podcast, Sunny, Ryan, and Vikram go over exactly just what Team GPS is, how it can help measure job satisfaction and performance, and help keep your organization running successfully. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Kela. Over to you, Sunny.
Hi, Vikram and Ryan. Thank you so much for joining my podcast.
Hi, Sunny. Thank you so much for having us.
Hey, Sunny. Good to be here.
The tool that we have developed, and I know it allows people, it gives them a system to measure the sentiment. It gives them a way to understand what that ESAT is and what the Net Promoter Score from employee perspective is. So at least you know where you stand and where you want to go from the culture perspective. So can we talk a little bit about how you are able to measure that ESAT and the eNPS?
Yeah, I mean, so you hit the nail on the head, right? So the first step is in kind of gauging that feeling is listening, right? And so you listen by capturing that feedback. You have to hear the feedback first. Now, a lot of companies will sort of fall short here because they'll accept that feedback. They'll say, hey, we're listening to you, but then they won't do anything with it. They don't actually analyze anything around it. So what we've done is we've created a mechanism where you're not only capturing feedback from your clients about how they feel about you, but you're capturing it from your employees as well, because your employees are your front line. They're the ones who are in the day-to-day operations, dealing with the clients, handling the issues, working within the processes that you've set forth. So you need to hear from them first and foremost in order to capture what they think and how they feel about their work environment, about what they're being asked to do.
Mm-hmm. No, well said, Ryan. Thank you. And Vikram, so talking about the frequency of these surveys, or so if I have to implement that system to listen to people, that let me start with first of all listening. How frequently I should be listening, and what is the mechanism that we have put in place in Team GPS that can allow me to implement my listening and the frequency of listening?
Yeah. So I think that's a very interesting question. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Like, what is too much and what is too less? So when we talk about listening to our employees, because to me, employees are just as important a stakeholder as our customers. Without one, we don't have the other. So we have to listen to them. I also agree with Ryan that listening does not mean just getting data. It also means actioning that data, right? Showing our employees that you're listening to them and you are making material changes based on what you're hearing. So that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. So you have to make sure that you're asking that question as often as you can actually take some action. Mm-hmm. You don't want to just keep asking questions and then not have time to do anything. Mm-hmm. So that's the first criteria to keep in mind is that I'm going to ask it when I feel like I have the capacity and the bandwidth and the budget, if necessary, to make changes based on what I've asked. Mm-hmm. The second thing is you don't want to ask the same question again and again, right? Mm-hmm. Survey fatigue is a real thing. And too much of anything becomes, people stop answering, or people stop answering honestly, which is an even worse situation to be in. Yeah. So I think you need a balance. And what we have done in our tool is we have given you kind of slightly different tool sets to work on this. So for example, eNPS is kind of the industry standard, right? You send out one question, you get a really good sense of whether people are happy or not. And then if they're not happy, then you can drill down into, okay, what does that actually mean? Why would they not recommend me to my friend who is looking for a job? Mm-hmm. So that's one piece of the puzzle that we have. But I think what makes us interesting is you also have the ability to build custom surveys. So let's say you send out an NPS. So the industry standard is maybe once a quarter to 2 times a year. Mm-hmm. Some people do it once a year, but again, depends on your particular situation. But I think, so let's say you do it once every quarter, and then this quarter, you got a really bad, like employee morale is down, right? So what do you do now? Mm-hmm. So then we have the ability to create custom surveys. So you can be like, okay, maybe I can create some 5 set of questions working with some people to figure out, okay, what is the root cause of that thing? and start getting that. So we have other ways to manage that. Some people tend to do a balance of two things. So they'll send an NPS once a quarter, but then send some pulse surveys once a month, right? So the NPS is kind of would you recommend us to other people? But then the pulse surveys could be something like, are you happy working with you? Do you think your team is doing a good job? Do you think your team is a good place to work in? So surveys by themselves don't really work well if you don't have a plan. So my recommendation would be, think through this. Don't just sit down and say, I'm going to do an ENPS, right? You have to kind of structure that out. You have to think about, what am I trying to get out of it? Yeah. What are going to be my next steps, right? And what do I think are the problem areas that I need to focus on and get some information from? So I think it's a combination of these things. So I don't have an answer saying, here's what the cadence should be, but here are some of the things you should think about as you plan how you want to implement listening to your employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do just want to add on to that real quick as well. So that eNPS is effectively just like a customer NPS, where you're asking, how likely are you to recommend working here to a peer, a colleague, a friend? And so that is one piece of the puzzle. But as Vikram highlighted, that's just one piece, right? So let's say you're sending that out on a quarterly basis. Well, if you're getting that feedback, you need to then dive a little bit deeper. And that's where those custom surveys and pulse surveys can come into play, because you can make them shorter and actionable. Just like with your customers, you want to ask less questions in order to make sure that they're going to fill it out, right? Because you can have a million questions on a sheet. If nobody fills it out, the data is irrelevant. So you want to kind of fine tune it and really ask that pulse question to get a better snapshot of more substantive material than just how likely are you to recommend working here? Because you may be likely to recommend working here, but you might still have some issues with certain elements of it. And if you don't dive deeper into that with let's say a monthly pulse survey or something of that nature, then you're not going to find those answers.
Yeah, no, that's so what I heard you guys say, and two very important points that you have made. One is being able to collect that information and then make it actionable. That's one. And the second is that the NPS gives you that general sense that how many people will refer that company, that brand to their friends. And that's the best way to hire people, right? Referrals. Because great people are normally connected with other great people, like-minded people. So you get a lot more success that way. And that adds to your strategy of the best hiring strategy is retention. And then the second piece of strategy there, Vikram, is referral-based hiring with the retention may not even require you to have any kind of job ad somewhere, because you're retaining well and you're hiring for new positions with the referrals, because X percentage of your people, they are saying, yes, I will refer, and you can ask for referrals, right? So
it's not just referrals. Just one quick note, right? It's not just referrals. So you don't want to start doing NPS when you start hiring. It's a brand building exercise. So people talk to each other all the time. Like when I meet my friends, if I'm happy about my company, I talk to them about it. And so if I keep doing that, a year from now, if I have an opening and I tell that person, he already has that built up knowledge that Vikram works for a really great company. So obviously I'm interested. Yeah. So we also have to think from that perspective.
Yeah. So now let's talk about making it actionable. There is just so much value in asking that question, would you refer us? And let's say, okay, so let's do a role play. Now, there is a survey that was sent, and we see that good number of people, they would refer that company. And then we wanted to get a little bit more deeper into the engagement score, and then we use that monthly survey. But what we have seen in this scenario is that there is some work required to better engage our people. Now, that is the data that we know from the survey. And now we need to make it actionable. So what are your suggestions, Vikram, to take that data and do something? And I totally get it that if you don't make it actionable, and if you don't create a report card and you don't report on that report card in terms of progress, then people lose faith in your surveys. You've got to really make sure that if you're listening, there's something that needs to be addressed, that you address it and you communicate that solution to people. So in this case, that employee engagement is an issue, how Team GPS can help us from the strategic plan perspective, what should be the next item, and how can we use Team GPS to produce a better engagement outcome.
So I think the first actionable piece of this process is not even related to questions, but as you said, keep people in the loop, right? Tell people that, hey, we heard you and here are the steps we are taking to respond to you, even if you don't have a final response yet, because some of these things take time. So keep people in the loop that, hey, we heard this response. We have identified out of the 4 things that popped up, here are the 2 things that we have identified as something we need to work on. So that's the first step, right? Keep people, let people know that you're actively working on it. That's the first thing. The second thing is pick on a consistent basis, pick 1 or 2 of those areas that you can focus on and start working on them. Don't try to address everything at the same time. Because if you are running a business, if your team is successful, they don't have time to do all at the same time. So make sure that your data that you get allows you to also help prioritize some of those things. So some of the questions, the way you phrase them is not just say, what are the problems, but try to see if you can get data about what are the highest priority problems for your employees that you would want to solve. So that allows you to focus on what needs to be actioned on first, and then build your backlog for that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and again, Team GPS does a bunch of things, but when you start looking at engagement, for example, like let's say you send out a survey and you realize that people feel underappreciated, right? Then come up with a strategy of, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of cutting edge tools that are available to me in the market that allow me to take care of that, right? What are tools that align with what I'm trying to do? And start looking at those alternatives. Involve a few people. So instead of don't take a top-down decision in these kind of things, right? So I think ITBD, we do a really great job. We set up a culture committee and hand off some of the work to them. I think it does 2 things. One, it allows them to explore the market. It gives your people some chance to do some leadership work, but also they feel like they had a say in this rather than just saying, hey, something got pushed down to us and now we have to use it, right? So those are the initial steps I would recommend. And then obviously, as you take that process forward, make some actual change. So don't just look at tools. Actually look at, for example, if you come to us with Team GPS, don't just do a call so that people feel you're doing something. Actually implement it, right? We'll help you figure out what your other problems are. We'll help you make sure we implement Team GPS to the best way possible in your situation, but follow through on that.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, so, within the tool, we give you a few mechanisms for doing that, right? We give you the capability of rewarding and recognizing your employees, not just from a managerial perspective, but from a peer-to-peer perspective. So in your scenario that Vikram called out, maybe people don't feel appreciated. Well, you can make a push to start rewarding and recognizing that way. Do it outside of the tool, but also within the tool so that it's tracked. We could, in theory, set up an item, a meeting agenda item for everybody. I want all of my managers discussing with their team, what does that mean to you? And dive deeper into this, right? So we get the feedback that people feel undervalued. I'm going to set a meeting agenda item so that every one-on-one that one of my managers has, we're discussing this and I'm capturing the feedback in more detail that way. Once we have that feedback in more detail, when it's not as this nebulous kind of concept of I don't feel valued, we can get to the root cause of what that means from an organization perspective, and then set company goals around that. And we can show people, look, at the company level, this is a goal that we've set based on your feedback. And then we can align that goal down through teams to departments, to teams, to individuals, so that they can see my goal here that, Sunny's asking me to roll out this employee engagement recognition program is because of feedback that came from us as employees and is contributing to the organization's success.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, and so the biggest piece that I heard in this conversation is that alignment as well. And also, when people see that you are intentional about culture, because culture will be created, right? And if you're intentional about your culture based on your core values, people know that our focus is, or the company's focus is on people, and they do value, they care about people. And everything that we do in life, every progress that we make in life normally starts with facing the reality and making it a priority. So people do see the priority of the company, that they are intentional about taking care of people, listening to them, people feel heard. And now, so once that overall understanding that yeah, company is focused there and company is doing things, and that will help us with the engagement. One another major piece that I normally hear from, like team members, that we normally go to conferences and talk to people of MSPs, is that their overall understanding that how they are making a difference, how they are contributing to the vision of the company. Because normally in the MSP space, these are SMBs and people do get busy, and sometimes they don't have the time to have timely check-in. They don't have time to sit down and create that connection between their effort and the business impact. So can you guys talk to me about how Team GPS can help a business align their team's goals and performance and their individual vision of success for their career with the company's vision and company's goals and objectives? So how do we help create that alignment?
Yeah, so I'll use a real specific example, right? So let's say that as an engineer, I have a scorecard, which is effectively just a set of success measures that my company has deemed I need to target in order to be successful in my role. One of those success measures might be, average billable tickets per day. I need to close 6 of them. We can take that goal and link it upwards up to a company measure. So at the company level, we can set, revenue targets, financials. Maybe we want to have a specific GP at the end of the year with a certain top line revenue to meet our growth targets. We can then create goals on how we're going to accomplish that. And one of those goals can then be aligned down through the organization. So as a engineer, I know that I'm supposed to close these 6 billable tickets per day. But I can also see that if I do that, that's going to help our customer retention goal at the department level. And then from the department level, in order to contribute from the customer retention, I can see that helps our bottom line at the top end goal. So a very simplistic example, but it's an easy way to sort of see that alignment upwards through. So I'm not just being asked to close 6 tickets arbitrarily because, Johnny said I should do that. It's to show that if we do this, our company is going to be successful.
Yeah, so that's beautiful. Because with the tickets example that you have used, Ryan, is that number of tickets to utilized hours. That's how MSPs bill. And based on then that billing and or product margins that they have to make, so that engineer can see how their scorecard is connected with the company's overall success. And when company is successful, then everyone is successful because the entire team, so overall it gives business that cash confidence, that overall margins confidence. And when you have that confidence, then that gives you a lot more options, and good companies with good culture will share what you are building. And then all team members are rising together, and they know every single ticket that they're closing in this example, how it's going to impact the entire team and entire company.